Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
The Bears.
Because of the way they play the nickel corner here, and the nickel corner plays 88, 85% of the snaps. He's got to be like part linebacker.
The Bears.
When you're in a scouting room, there's going to be differences of opinion.
The Bears.
Once coaches get involved, of course, they've got their own opinions about what fits best for what they want to do, and that could be drastically different than what the scouts say.
Well, you're looking at traits, and remember when he tested very, very well.
The Bears.
One thing good about Kevin, he's been with 2 other organizations, as well as being the commissioner of the Big Ten. He's been around.
The Bears.
With Greg Olson, Jerry didn't want to get rid of him. I didn't want to get rid of him. Nobody wanted to get rid of him. One guy wanted to get rid of him. Mike Martz, because Mike Martz didn't know what the hell to do with him. We tried to talk Lovey out of hiring Mike Martz for a month and a half. He's playing zone, but number one, he doesn't get enough depth with the drop. But who the hell's going? How many times does a 305, 310-pound defensive tackle drop into coverage, especially in a key situation?
The Bears.
Greg, why are teams wrong on quarterback evaluation so often?
Number one, it's a hard position to evaluate. There's probably not as many real good quarterback evaluators as there needs to be.
The Bears. The Bears. The Bears.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a fresh episode of GTF. My name is Aldo Gandia, and we have got a good one for you today and next week and the following week and the following week. Greg Gabriel has been producing the show now, as well as being the star of the show. Greg, how are you, my friend?
I need more money. If you just elevated me to producer, I need more money.
I hear you, brother. I hear
5
you.
times 0 equals 0.
Let us quickly introduce our guest, because I know we have him for a limited amount of time. Why don't you take the honors, because you've known him a hell of a lot longer than I have.
Well, I've known Eric Edholm, I don't know, maybe 12, 14 years. We worked together at Pro Football Weekly. He's been at various publications. He's with NFL.com right now. He's one of their draft writers, a really good draft guru. And we've had him on before. He's a good friend of the show, so we're happy to have him on again.
There he is, Eric Edholm. How are you, brother?
I'm doing well. I like how you guys brought me in right as you're talking money. Your good. Your timing couldn't be better, man.
I hear you. How are things, Eric?
Things are good, man. Yeah, I got down to Mobile for the Senior Bowl. I didn't make it to New Orleans for the Super Bowl. I know it was 2 hours away, but timing and logistics and all that couldn't work out. So I'm sad to miss one of my favorite American cities in the world, and a great Super Bowl host city as well. And obviously the game wasn't that great, but the week leading up to it usually is. So. But now we're in full draft mode now. We shift towards combine points of view and pro day perspectives and all that, and start thinking about where these players are going to go.
Yeah, free agency too, as Greg says.
Yeah, free agency. What's that? Come on, draft is where it's at. Let's
money.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. Good selling point.
When you mentioned New Orleans, the very first Super Bowl I went to was Super Bowl 20 that the Bears were in. But I was working for the Giants, and I had never been to a Super Bowl, so and I didn't know how tough tickets were to get back then. So I'm at a game. In fact, it was Louisville. Howard Schnellenberger was his first year coaching, and it was his first game. And Howard and George Young was our GM. Were really good friends, close friends. So I'm sitting with George in the press box. Excuse me. So this is in, September of 85. And so I said, "Hey, George, can I get like 4 or 5 tickets for the Super Bowl?" And he just looks at me and goes, "I'll get you 2."
and you'll be lucky you have that many, right?
That's right. So, I went to that, and when I came away from that saying that's the only place the Super Bowl should be at.
100%.
Because everybody is in one area. It's like Indianapolis for the combine.
Right.
You don't need a car. You just go to your hotel and you can walk all over the place. Great restaurants, great places to go at night. The game's right there at the Dome. So I agree. It should be like the only place, but I also get that they want to move it around. And when and if they ever build that stadium down the street from Aldo, they'll have one here. Except I probably won't be alive for that one, but that's okay.
I may not either, the way they're going. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Eric, I got to start off with the questions here because you did a mock draft, and Greg hates mock drafts, but he also knows why we journalists have to do them.
Sure.
And so you picked Will Campbell as the number 10 pick, and you wrote he might get dinged for the arm length thing. I couldn't care less. I'd love to see Campbell at tackle, but he could be a 4-position starter as rookie. Then you mocked 3 offensive linemen immediately after: Kelvin Banks to the Dolphins, Tyler Booker to the Cowboys, and Membu to the 49ers. So I ask you, why Campbell over those 3 guys to the Bears?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, obviously this year's offensive line class in general, I think this year's tackle class especially, you're hearing sort of the same things we're hearing year in and year out, but I think maybe to a little bit greater degree, the whole question of, yes, they were a college tackle, but are they going to play inside in the NFL? And it comes down to, body dimensions, arm lengths, how well they obviously protect the edge and things like that. And, I think we're still at that point where we're splitting hairs a little bit and trying to figure out, who fits in everywhere. And to Greg's point, we don't know a whole lot right now, and not just about the prospects, but about the teams themselves. We're still assembling staffs. We still have a team without a GM, right? We still have so many moving parts. Free agency hasn't even begun. We haven't had the rash of players who get cut, but you have an idea of kind of where these guys fit in. And the consistent thing that I heard on Will Campbell, both from LSU, what they're hearing from NFL scouts, because I have some guys down there that I talk to, but also from the NFL people themselves, is that, he's going to come in right around where the cutoff is, about 33 inches for that tackle position. And, that I'd have to, sort of think while we talk about some guys who were on that threshold, maybe Slater, the kid from Northwestern who went to the Chargers, and a couple others who weren't quite the ideal measurements, who've ended up being pretty good tackles, but there's a pretty good list of them. I wouldn't say it's, there's a reason why we tend to stick to some of those constraints a little bit, but and the process is obviously going to sort out who goes first, second, third among the offensive linemen. But man, when I watched Will Campbell as a freshman, you just felt like this guy looks the part, natural, easy mover, harnesses his strength pretty well. I think could probably do well inside or outside. Again, I feel like when you have a player like this, you try him at tackle, and then if not, move him inside to guard. But yeah, I mean, he and Membu and a couple other guys I think are right in that running for OT1 honors.
Yeah, well, Membu is another guy that probably, well, he will be a guard. He's only 6'3.5", 6'3 3/4", even though he's got some arm length. There's one starting left tackle in the league that's shorter than 6'4", and that's the Bills' starting left tackle, and he's 6'03.7".
Dawkins, yeah.
Yeah. So,
yep.
He's an eighth of an inch too short, and he's got 35-inch arms. So he makes up for it. But, this class, it's like you said, we're waiting on a lot of stuff that we don't know that really can determine on paper anyway where they're going to play. Now, Connerly was one, and he was at the Senior Bowl, and he passed the height test to a degree. Yep. He was listed at 6'4". He was 6'04.1", 6'04.2", something like that. And he had 34+ inch arms. So he could play tackle, but when I look at his body, I see a guard. He just looks like a guard. movement-wise, but that's going to be up to the team that drafts him. Thing with Campbell is that, I looked last year's tape. I did him during the summer for one of the agents that I do work for, and I said, damn, this guy's really good. He's going to be a high first-round pick. I did not think that he played quite as well this year as he played a year ago. And then, obviously the arm length, he came in at 33 inches even in the spring. I never put any emphasis on the spring arm lengths because a rookie scout usually does them and seldom is that measurement done correctly. So we'll wait till the combine. But here's the comp. See if you agree. And there's a little story. I've told Aldo this story before, but I haven't said it to you. It was Taylor Decker. So this is Taylor Decker when he was going into his final year at Ohio State. I remember I was doing him on tape, really liked him. And so I called up Howie and we're talking. And I said, Howie, this guy at Ohio State's really good. He goes, oh, his arms are too fucking short. I go, what? Now, I didn't have the spring arm measurements. He goes,
right.
I said, what are they? He goes, 32 and a half. I said, they look a lot longer than 32 and a half. So he goes, well, with arms that short, I'm not touching them. So, which is fine. And then, but he goes to the combine, he was 32 and a half, 33 and a half. So they were like an inch off. And the combine's always exact. So in saying that, the LSU kid could have 34-inch arms in another 3 weeks when he goes to the combine. We'll find out then. So, but the other guy is Banks, who like Connerly, listed as 6'4". So is he taller than 6'4", or is he 6'3 and a half? And, until we find out that and find out his arm length, then we'll find out where he plays. But the more I do tape for the Bears, and obviously what they do in free agency is going to determine this. But I like those inside guys better because I don't think there's a sure bet at tackle, at least that early. And you could say the Simmons kid from Ohio State, but he's coming off an ACL. So,
right.
You can't gamble with that, not that high. But, God, you look at that kid from your school, Membu.
Yep.
Membo. How do you say his name? Membo?
Yeah, Armand Membu, yeah.
Membu.
Yep.
And then Booker from Alabama. And those guys are freaking monsters.
Yep. Yeah, Membu, I am a Mizzou grad, so obviously I sort of watch them. Obviously, it's different when I'm watching a prospect for I'm studying this guy to see what he looks like as a player versus watching my favorite team on TV, right? And I really, really try not to have bias. Like, I didn't love Blaine Gabbert when he came out, at some point you have to sort of cut your ties to your personal school, but it became pretty obvious that by the end of the 2023 season, he was Mizzou's best offensive lineman. Now, they reshuffled a lot in 2024, brought in the kid from Oklahoma, brought in the kid from SMU, try to figure out everyone's best spot. And Armand Membu was still their best lineman. And early in the year when they had some chemistry issues, he was the one guy that they sort of felt confident running behind and leaving alone in protection one-on-one. You didn't see as much help from tight ends and backs as you did with Marcus Bryant on the other side. So, that certainly caught my eye. When I had a Mizzou guy reach out to me, meaning a media guy, and ask me, a friend of mine, I've known him almost as long as you, Greg, and he said, what do you think? And I was like, boy, top 50, top 70, somewhere in that range. I was thinking maybe early second round to just off without having asked anybody. But I almost feel like my effort to try to reduce the Mizzou bias was working against me in that case. So I was pleasantly surprised to hear that teams had him a lot higher graded than that. And there are teams that will look at tackle. The height is just below, like you said, what you're looking for, but the arm length is good enough, and the mass and the movement skills certainly impress. So you're right. There will be definitely some teams that look him at a guard. Booker probably strictly a guard. Simmons probably strictly a tackle. But then Donovan Jackson, the guy who took Simmons' place, maybe he's a guard, maybe he's a tackle. It's sort of like the Washington kid last year that went to the Steelers. So It's fun to have these discussions and then kind of look back 3 years later. Did they get it right? Did they put him in the right spot? Did they did they reach for a player because they thought he was a tackle? Those are what help you kind of shape and your mindset about the draft and your understanding of how these things work.
Jackson's a really interesting guy because there's not a lot of people that can play inside all their career and then move out to left tackle and still more than hold their own. But he's another guy that's 6'3.5". He's got some length to him, but really down the stretch, he played really, really well for Ohio State. And
I almost feel like he played better there than he did inside, which is crazy, but it felt like that.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with you, but it's little different game when you get up to the NFL level. But I think at worst he's a second rounder.
The one guy who gave him trouble, that I saw, I shouldn't say the one guy, but the one guy that I watched that gave him an issue was Abdul Carter, who's going to be the first, second, third pick in the draft. Yeah, so, there's no shame in that. And he was still kind of adjusting to the position a little bit. Right. No,
he's a really good player, but the guy, Membu is just growing on me.
Yep.
I watch him. He is such a good athlete for a guy that's 330 pounds. Really,
absolutely.
He can change direction. He'll get after people. I like Booker too, but Booker isn't the athlete that Membu is, and that's why I give Membu a little bit of an edge.
I think if you're obviously, if you're a passing team, you certainly could project Membu to the right side as a right tackler. I don't think he'll play left tackle. I think we're probably saying he's a right tackle, a right guard, maybe a left guard. But it was interesting to see how often they ran behind him in key situations too. And I just think a team that like the Ravens, like the Eagles, any of these run heavy teams that's sort of like a baked into their identity. I mean, I think he can be outstanding right away. And it doesn't mean that a team that throws it a little more couldn't value him, but I think that's going to obviously be a big kind of part of what he does. And, we'll see. It's I was sort of trying to pair up Campbell with the Bears thinking, athletic mover guy, sure, again, the arm length, but still I could see him working for a team that has Caleb Williams at quarterback where there's a little bit of unknown behind him. You may have to sustain your blocks a little bit longer, and you may have to sort of torque your body in unusual angles for recovery and things like that. I mean, I don't know. This is, again, it's so early, but, there's a wide variety of body types in this draft at offensive lineman, which is kind of interesting. We have a 5'10" center this year. A kid who played really well, Willie Lampkin, down in Mobile. I've never seen that, Greg. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a 5'1" offensive lineman.
Honestly, never.
I kept thinking this is going to be rough, but he played well down in the bowl and in the Senior Bowl practices. He held his own. He was going up against Deone Walker, 6'6", 340, and Cameron Jackson from Florida, who's like maybe a quarter inch shorter and 2 pounds heavier. And when you have a low center of gravity, sometimes you can beat those guys if they get too high. So the O-line discussion is fascinating to me. I feel like I learn something every draft cycle, and listen to guys like you guys and Brandon Thorne obviously does a great job on this, and just the people who really drill down on this stuff teach me something all the time.
We got a question.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. We got a question from the chat regarding Membu. Ant Mass asks if he's better suited to play the center position. What do you guys think?
I've never seen him snap. It's hard to say, but I think I think it would almost be like wasting his talent. I don't mean to say that center is not an important position. It is, but I think you reserve that spot for, unless you have somebody who's just so exceptional up front at making the calls, obviously, and blocking in tight quarters. But I would think you can almost hide a guy there if you need to. Like, he's a talented player, but he may not have the same mass, or he may not have the same reach as an outside guy. But I could see it. It wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world. Again, not knowing, his ability to adjust those things. And you see that down at the Senior Bowl. They'll take tackles and move them to center, take guards and move them to center, depending on, what the coaches ask and how many centers are currently on the roster, because you need somebody to snap the ball. So,
right.
That can happen elsewhere as well.
Gray Zabel is a perfect example of that. At the Senior Bowl, I think he practiced at all 5 positions.
Who was it? Gray Zabel, you said?
Gray Zabel, yes.
Yeah. I mean, if you asked me to pick one player who just consistently impressed me the most, he had a tough loss on the maybe the second day of practice, but I would say him. I mean, I knew about him coming in, but I wouldn't say that I had a great feel for him as a player, but he really impressed me from, and as you know, the pass rush drills that they do, that really does favor the defensive player. I mean, they can do any spin move they want, and they've got these wide lanes to run through. And if the offensive lineman wins consistently, I think that's a really good sign for a guy who plays under control and understands, body mirroring and good balance and things like that. And he just seemed to have it. So talking about a shift from outside left tackle, a lot of snaps there, but also played elsewhere. I think he looks like a 10-year pro inside.
Yeah, I agree with you. And probably will end up being a center.
Could be.
Because he's got the smarts to do it.
Graham Barton-ish. Yep.
So that'll be interesting. What's your take on Banks from Texas?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kept wanting to sort of fall in love with him when I watched him, and I don't he's not a guy who's going to blow you away. Like when you see him and you're going to, there's not these amazing pancake blocks and him sprinting 17 yards to lead a screen or something like that, but really kind of a patient, sound, I would say coordinated athlete. I think he's sort of got his hands and feet and hips in line with each other and never feels like he's way off balance, and, pretty good leverage, pretty good bend. I mean, I would say he gets out over his skis a little bit when he's run blocking. I feel like he's sort of like he's like running downhill almost, like, you know what I mean? Like his head's sort of down. He's got his weight all out in front of him a little bit, but, he's played, I think, enough. Well, I should say this. I mean, he sort of falls into the same class as Membu in the sense, he could be a guard, he could be a tackle. I wouldn't be shocked either way. I think I had him to the Dolphins in round 1, kind of a mid to late first round pick. And, it's hard to say where he'll go. I don't think he's much higher than where I had him, I think, in the middle of round 1 to maybe the early round 2, sort of that 15 to 35 range, if I had to guess. But good player. I don't know that he's ever going to be a superstar, but I think he could be really nice.
What I think hurt him is that, he hurt his knee during the year.
Yep.
And then he missed 2.5 games, something like that. And then he came back, and you could tell he wasn't 100%. So
wasn't in condition to, yeah.
And so some people, I think, got down on him based on, he's playing hurt and he lost some movement skills because he's got a bad wheel. When that happens to guys, I just throw out the tape after he's. I don't even look at it. Look at it when he's healthy, and then you get an idea. But it also shows that he's got a degree of toughness. Big games coming up. We had the SEC championship game. You're in the college football playoff. You got to play good. You got to strap it up and play. So he did that, and so to his credit. But I was talking to Brugler, and he said, I just don't like him as much as some people do. I mean, he's like you. He's got him like in the middle to the, the bottom third of the first, and not the upper third. And I'm probably in that same area with him. I think I'd take some of these other guys before him. I wouldn't feel bad if that's who I got stuck with.
I mean, I almost feel like we kind of ruined some of these guys. Maybe I'm totally wrong or looking at this too much from a like a fan perspective or whatever. But when it was that game against Alabama that he had, I think his freshman year, like Will Anderson, and doing a good job on him. And I remember the announcers, I don't know if it was Herb Street or whoever it was, just sort of raving about the guy and was like, look at the job he's doing against Will Anderson, future top 2 pick or whatever in the draft. sometimes guys have those, and they're 5-star recruits in high school. They have an incredible performance against a very good player. I remember Chris Williams having a brilliant night against Jared Allen on a Monday or Thursday night game I went to, and thinking, okay, here we go. So it happens, right? Sometimes these guys have outstanding performances in big games, and then that we almost get a little let down by them if they don't turn into, Jonathan Ogden or something. So maybe I'm being a little too harsh on him, like reputation wise. But again, I think he's a really solid football player who, at worst will play like a second round pick, or what you would expect a second round pick to play. You know what I mean? I know that sounds like I'm selling short on him, but I think he's pretty good.
I think unless something comes up too negative at Indy, I think he goes in the first.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
I don't. To me, he's the earliest you're going to see him is around that 15 to 20 area.
Yep.
And so it's if for the Bears, unless they traded way down, he's out of the equation for the Bears as far as I can see.
Yep.
Eric, I know you have to leave because you've got another podcast to do in a few minutes. But before you go, I'd love for you to give us your thoughts on the acquisition of Ben Johnson as head coach of the Chicago Bears. And what are your expectations for the Bears offense in 2025? I know there's still a lot of player acquisition issues to go through, but based on what you know about Ben Johnson's offense, what are your expectations for the Bears in 2025?
Yeah, obviously a guy whose reputation has, his stock has zoomed in the last couple of years based on what the Lions have done. And, it wasn't like he came in with a bunch of fanfare or whatever. It was okay, let's give this guy a shot here. And they did, and he was terrific, right? I think obviously the sort of the trick play stuff is what garners a lot of public interest, and it's the creativity that I think obviously gets people excited. There was a time when we thought Matt Nagy was the greatest trick play artist of all time. And that first year that he was here, it's got to be more than that. It's obviously how well do you manage 53 personas and understand what has to happen today, what has to happen tomorrow, what has to happen 6 months from now. And, these are highly organized people, and it requires so much attention and so much focus to get to be a successful head coach. And how do you learn? You learn through trial and error, right? You can't just do what the last guy did. I think if he tries to come in and become Dan Campbell Jr., it's going to be hard to buy, right? He's got to be himself, and he's got to bring elements of his offense, but they also have to cater to the strength of the Bears, right? Which right now would seem to be the talents of Caleb Williams, the talents of the wide receivers and pass catchers, I guess you would say. There's obviously questions about the makeup of the offensive line as it currently sits. That's something he's going to have to work around. In Detroit, he had arguably a top 3 or 4 unit in the NFL the last couple of years. So, you go back and look at some of the early struggles that he went through as they were trying to find that identity and sort of cast their lot forward with who they had, but they figured it out. They started out terribly in 2022 and ended up one of the hottest teams in the NFL, knocked the Packers out of the playoffs. So, it showed me there was a guy who can grow. I thought that his last game for the Lions wasn't his best from a play calling standpoint, but then again, I think, play calling is just one element of it. His job is to make Caleb Williams the best quarterback he could possibly be, and also deal with the other 52 guys on the roster. So it's a lot, and we don't know whether he can do it yet. So I'm excited to see what he can do because, we've waited for so long for some kind of stability in Chicago, a GM, a coach, a quarterback who are there for some length of time and make their imprint on this franchise. And, this is the best hope I think they've had in, the 25 years I've been doing this, unless I'm forgetting somebody who didn't exist. But yeah, I mean, this has got to be an exciting time for Chicago Bears fans, but also a little bit of a nerve-wracking one in the sense that, it's not proven until it happens.
Greg is going to remind you of the Lovie Smith Bears at what Greg worked over at Amazon.
Well, yeah, but since him, right?
I'm going to say this, though. the first thing you got to do when you're a head coach is put together a staff.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the staff he's put together and you look at the staff for Lovey's original staff, there's no comparison. On paper, Ben Johnson's staff is superlative.
Yeah.
Now we got to see them all work together. I mean, Lovey had a lot of first-time NFL coaches. We got a lot of guys out of college, that turned out to be good coaches. And a lot of them, Daryl Drake, who may rest in peace, one of the best wide receiver coaches I've ever been around. But he, it was his first time in the pros. He had come from the University of Texas. Then he went to Arizona. Then he went to the Steelers, and he died while he was with the Steelers in training camp. He had a heart attack. But God, what a great coach he was.
Indeed.
Yeah, I almost feel like, there's you wish that coaches could have that kind of developmental program like when Belichick took over and took a bunch of guys from Mount Union, and a couple old friends, you know what I mean? But it was a hodgepodge staff, and it was kind of a, nobody knew anything about these guys. And then 3-4 years later, they're all interviewing for head coaching jobs, right? Or coordinators elsewhere and things like that. And Lovey obviously, built his thing up and had time to sort of figure out, okay, this person's best in this role. And, Ben went after like the big guns, and he went after known quantities, which is smart. I think you get former head coaches on the staff. That's going to help, fill the room with leadership and knowledge and experience and all that. So yeah, it's exciting. I mean, there's a lot to do, and getting that defense back in order is obviously a big priority too. And they're one of those teams that no doubt can make a big jump by mere fact of their record last year, right? I mean, they were 4-2 at one point, and they weren't even playing exceptional football at the time. But it was a sign that if things go right, maybe this team's in for a 9 or 10 win season. They didn't go right. And I still think that talent for the large part exists on this team. And, he'll have some knowledge of the division, obviously, which will help him. I think the weapons alone will carry them through to a certain degree. But, if they want to tighten it up and make it a successful operation year one, it's gonna be a lot of screw tightening. I mean, there's still some things to figure out, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no question. I know you got to. We're like 35, and I know you.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'll head out now if you guys don't mind. But yeah, it was a pleasure talking. We talked like 6 guys, so I'd love to come back on whenever you can have me.
We'll do it one more time before the draft. How about that?
Yes.
Thank you, Eric, very much.
Good talking to you guys. Take it easy.
Appreciate it.
All right. You can catch Eric Edholm's work on NFL.com. He does the power rankings. He specializes in the draft, and his articles are always worthy of reading. And his Twitter handle at Eric Edholm. I'll put it up on the screen one more time. He's a really good follow. Eric is a great guy too. So I've been telling him for years now, I'm going to buy you a beer, and it's been 5-6 years. I hope I can get it done someday.
It's funny because we talk a lot on the phone. And it's always like, let's get together for lunch. Okay. Yeah, we've been saying that for years.
Yeah, it's so difficult. It really is, especially when you get to be our age.
He lives way out, and so it just
I think he lives out difficult. By Cary, Illinois, if I remember right, because we were talking a little bit of golf, and there's a really nice golf course up there.
Yeah, he's out in the western burbs. I mean, it's a good. From where I live anyway, a good 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've got a lot to talk about. I've collected a number of questions while Eric was on, and I promised people that you would get to them. But before we start talking about the Bears and the Super Bowl, we had 2 unfortunate passings this past week. Virginia McCaskey and former Chicago Bears head coach Dick Jauron. You knew them both, and I know you would like to share a few words.
Yeah, I mean, Virginia, you got to say that was not unexpected. She was 102 years old. I mean, when you get to that age, every day's a bonus. But what a lovely lady. I put a post out on X, and I just said when she walked in the building, everybody knew it, and it's because she wasn't loud. She was very soft-spoken, sweet woman, but she just had a presence about her that very few people that I've been associated with ever had. And I just a really nice person. I had one little story, and it's, it's something that means something to me, but probably won't to anybody else. But, although they used to have a Bears convention downtown in like mid-March.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So down at that, I had to be on a panel for something, and my daughter was in town. So my daughter's with me, and I took her over to meet Mrs. McCaskey, and we're talking for a few minutes. And then I had to go do this panel. I said, come on, Ryan, let me, I got to do this thing you can watch. And Mrs. McCaskey says, no, let her sit with me. I'll talk to her. And what she did, and it was like, wow, and it was just, that was a grandmother being a grandmother. Just what a really nice, super lady. And that little thing meant a real lot to me. And I know it meant something to my daughter.
Yeah, absolutely. You got, I've never met her, but you got that sense that she was exactly how you described her, a really warm, kind person. And she didn't have any airs about her. She knew that she was very fortunate to be the head of the Chicago Bears. It was her dad who founded the league, who founded the team, who kept the league alive through hard times and stuff. And she appreciated what Mr. Hallis did and everyone else in the organizations, and she proudly tried to continue George's legacy. And I got a feeling this team wants to stay in Chicago because of Virginia McCaskey, because that's what George would have wanted. Do you get that sense too, Greg?
I mean, as compared to Arlington Heights?
Yes, exactly.
I don't know. She lived in Des Plaines. So, I mean, she wasn't really in Chicago, and she lived there all married life. I mean, and that's the other thing about her. People with that kind of money, you think they'd have this big mega house. She's got a little 2,000 square foot house.
I learned that this week. Yeah. Wow.
and raised like a bunch of kids, like 10 kids in that house.
Mm-hmm. So before we talk about Dick Jauron, Tony's got a question. Do you think that now there might be interested in selling the team, the family? No, huh?
No, they, somebody asked me that, and I said, this isn't Yellowstone, and you got to sell the ranch when Kevin Costner dies, to pay the estate taxes. In fact, it was funny because I'm watching that show and I go, the man never hired an estate planner. No, they take care of these things.
Yeah.
And first of all, she doesn't own 80% of the team. She might own 7%.
Yeah.
All those kids own a piece of that team.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the estate isn't for a $6 billion thing. The estate's on her percentage of the team.
Interesting.
But they take care of these things. There was questions about that when Wellington Mara died, and it was a non-issue. All the kids had a piece of the team.
Yeah. Yeah, they're making a lot of money now, and selling it, of course, they will make more money, but why sell the golden goose is probably a good way of looking at it.
There are so many kids, and this is very hypothetical. So could there be a child that wants to cash in? Maybe. I don't know all. I know a bunch of the children. I don't know all of them. But and some have died. Timmy died a few years ago. Really good guy too. So there's probably been, what's the word I want?
Discussions.
Well, discussions, and it's that take. If somebody wants to check out, fine, we'll buy it, and it'll go amongst the rest of the siblings. And don't forget, the Pat Ryan and Andy McKenna's family, they own 20%. So the Houses only own 80%, or the
Right.
the McCaskies own 80% of the team.
Yeah. And the NFL has a new rule that allows joint venture capitalists to invest in teams up to 10%, I think is the number. And so, there might be some infusion of capital if the Bears want to go in that direction, money to build a new stadium, for other spending capital. So that's something we'll be taking a look at. All right. Now, Dick Jauron, how well did you know him?
Pretty well. It's funny because Dick was not a fan of OTAs. So we got the job June 13th, I think was the day I got hired. June 13th or 14th, Jerry, the day before, 2001. And I got, came in the next day, and OTAs were already done. Everybody else had OTAs going on. The Bears didn't. They had finished like the week before, because what Dick did is that instead of having one OTA a day and have 3 a week or 4 a week, he did double sessions.
Uh-huh.
He'd had two on Monday, 2 on Wednesday, 2 on Friday or something. And then you'd have 6 of them done. And at that time, I think we could have 12 or something. So he'd get it done real quick so everybody could get the hell out. So when we got to Hallis Hall in mid-June, there was nobody here. There's no coaches here. There's nobody in the weight room. It was just, Jerry, Bobby, DePaul, myself, as far as football ops. And we're just planning for training camp. And it wasn't until we got to training camp up at Platteville that we even met him.
Wow.
So it was because they were gone. And, so it's just, it was a kind of a different scenario. So it was really getting to know that whole staff. And there were some really good guys on that staff. Greg Bloch, who was the defensive coordinator, is still a good friend. And he lives way up in northern Wisconsin. And, Bob Wiley, the offensive line coach, was a really good coach. John Shoup was on that staff. Just a number of really, really good guys. And so Pat Flaherty was on that staff. He had the tight ends. Wiley had the offensive line. So good people, a good staff. Things didn't work out for Dick. He really only had the one good season, and that was our first year here, 2001. And before that, they had struggled, and we had that real big year, and it actually earned Dick an extension. They went 13-3, won the old NFC Central. We were the last winners of the NFC Central, and we ended up extending him, and so it was. He was around for 2 more years, but things just didn't go right.
Yeah. He seemed like a really great guy.
Nice guy, quiet, unassuming.
Yeah, right. But really focused on the job, no nonsense type of guy. And players who played for him during that era, I never heard a player complain about him at all. Unfortunately, he just didn't have the success that we all wanted as fans anyway.
Not a holler guy, so and Lovey wasn't either. So it was like back-to-back coaches where you had more quiet, unassuming type personalities, running the team.
Yeah, indeed. All right, we've got so much to talk about. Why don't we start with your thoughts about the Super Bowl game in general? What really stood out to you besides the fact that Vic Fangio is a genius and that violence often wins football games? He had those guys hitting, man.
I'll tell you, I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
I worked in Philly as a consultant Andy's last year, and it was a tough year. Lost a lot of games. They let him go at the end of the year, and what happened was, that season was doomed from 1 week into training camp. Andy's son died from an overdose at training camp.
Yeah,
and his son was on the coaching staff, and Andy never recovered from that year. And how could he? And the Eagles make a change. Chip Kelly was brought in after that, and that was a disaster. But that's another story. But Andy, he's only out of work like a couple weeks, and he gets the job in Kansas City, and what he's done there. And he just, I think the change of scenery refreshed him to a degree.
Yeah.
But I always thought, I said going into that game, I go, when he plays Philly, it's personal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the record, he wins most of the games. And so I thought for sure that they'd win, but goddamn, was Philadelphia good.
Yeah.
I sent Howie a text. I didn't even wait till after the game. I sent him a text in the middle of the third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect to hear right away because I knew he would have gave you some choice words, but don't jinx us. But I did in the middle of the third quarter. I sent
That's
him a
hilarious.
text, and I mean that was just an overpowering, strong football team. And you've heard me say it, you win on the line of scrimmage on both sides. Their offensive and defensive lines are so freaking good. And, I hear people saying, and some of them are probably on here because I saw Tony the pod boss is on there, but a lot of guys want us to take a running back high. And it's like, I see it next all the time. And it's like, did you see when they picked up Barkley? He was like the last piece of the puzzle. That's when you go after the running back. You got to build the rest. And in this year, when you look at the running back class this year, damn, it might be the deepest running back class in history.
Yeah, indeed.
It's really, really good. And so you're going to get a good guy. And I want to dispel, some of the things too. There's a lot of stuff going around. Well, Johnson doesn't like Swift. Well, I did some checking on that one too. And that's not true. Okay. What happened is now there was, what I did is I got a hold of some people in Detroit and I said, okay, what's the real story? There was a position coach that felt that durability was a problem. And if you look at his first 3 years in the league, his durability was questionable. There's games he missed, starts he missed. The last 2 years in Philly and here, he's missed one game in 2 years and put up as statistically the best years he had. Johnson was not one of those people that, what they got to is when they got to the draft, they had Gibbs rated real high. Gibbs fell right in their lap. And they did not move on Swift until after the draft, after they had Gibbs in tow. And then they said, well, two similar space type players, we're going to move this guy now. And we got a 4th round pick for him. So, people will think, well, he's going to move him. He got rid of him before. Well, first of all, he was the offensive coordinator. He wasn't the head coach and he wasn't the general manager. Mm-hmm. Those are the guys that make the moves.
Right. Yeah, and I read somewhere that I think the recent record anyway, of running backs drafted is 30 running backs drafted in a draft. And this year we could see more than 30 drafted. It's quite a possibility. And so on day 3, you're going to be seeing a lot of running backs chosen and a lot of good quality running backs. I'm with you, Greg. You gotta bolster that line of scrimmage. The fact that Vic Fangio did not blitz once in that Super Bowl contest is a tribute to those 4 players or the entire defensive line core, but also to Vic's ability to see that the Kansas City Chiefs had some weaknesses on the line. The fact that they had to move Tooney to the left tackle position.
Tony, yeah.
Yeah, that was huge. That was huge. And you talk about arm length. Tooney has guard length arms, and he's playing the
Right,
left
but he
tackle
had to play. He
position.
had to play the tackle position for him.
Right, exactly. So,
And you know, it's funny because I'm watching that game, and I'd watch like 12 Kansas City games, but really just focusing on Trey Smith. Really get a good feel for him over the last 2 years, and in my opinion, he is by far the best lineman on that team. It's not even close. And by far one of the best guards in the league. I mean, he is that good. Whatever he gets, he's got it coming. Now, in saying that, and then watching what was going on in the game, I just said, there's no fucking way they're getting rid of this guy. They can't let him walk. He's their best guy.
mm-hmm.
You know, and so, you know what they made? They made a mistake. They signed Jauron Taylor to a free agent, and they gave him a ton of money. He sucks.
Yep. He's bad.
He's really. I'm not gonna say he's bad, but he ain't very good.
Right.
You know. So, and you know they're up against the cap, but you can find ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I just cannot see. I mean, could it happen? Of course it could happen, but I just can't see that there's going to be, that there's any way that they're going to let their best offensive lineman go out the door.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that Trey Smith, his value in free agency, took a hit in that game? I mean,
no, because I went back. I saw one bad play.
Oh, okay.
And that was near the end because I'm watching the lines getting beat up. He wasn't. In fact, he put Carter on his ass a couple times.
Okay.
And then I'm watching. They go, oh, he's getting killed. He's not. They go, what game are you watching? Because you know what I did? I didn't watch the game. I watched two guys. I watched Mekhi Becton and him, and that's it.
So we've got some questions about that, and I do want to talk about free agency before I get in depth into the draft questions. We got tons of them, but what do you think about Becton and Trey Smith? Do you have a preference over one of them? And
Trey Smith is the best guy. There's no question.
No question.
Okay, now you know I Spotrac does a pretty good job.
Yeah, they do
on figuring out what contracts are going to be
market value.
Yeah. And with the good guys, they're generally light because there's going to be teams bidding. But okay, so with Trey Smith, they got $19.7 million for his AAV, by far the highest one of the guards. Okay, Becton, he's got a 10.2, and probably because he missed the season, first year at guard this year. But I mean, he's a year ago, if you'd have said, hey, you want Mekhi Becton? No. You know, he was a bust at the Jets, but part of that is he is with the Jets. Come on, the Jets are a horrible franchise.
They really are.
And my New York Giant bias is coming out. So, but God darn it, he played good, and he played for a real good coach and Jeff Stoutland. And Jeff has been there. Jeff was on Chip Kelly's original staff in 2013. And Jeff had come from Alabama. He's Saban's offensive line coach. He's been at Philly ever since. He's been with 3 different head coaches in Philly. How he isn't letting him out of the door. That's how good he is. And, whoever gets hired, no, you keep this guy. He's that good. But Jeff has done a really great job with Becton and made the guy a bunch of money.
Yeah.
10.2 might be a little light. But he can come. He's not quite as good as Trey Smith. A little different kind of player. Trey Smith is nasty. Now he could. Becton is athletic and big, but he's not. And he puts people on the ground too, but he's not nasty like Smith is nasty, at least from the tape I've seen.
Yeah.
But there's 2 other guys that I like. one's at right guard, and Spotrak's got this guy is the second guy to Trey Smith, and that's Will Fries from the Colts.
Yeah.
Who missed the last half of the season. Actually more than that. It's 4 months right now. He broke his tibia. So he had surgery. They insert a rod to, quicken the healing. It's a 5.5 month injury. He's at 4 months right now. So, I mean, he may be good to go now, but, he should be good to go by the time of the off-season program. But you watch his tape, and he was a 6th round pick or something. He is really good.
Yeah,
really good.
I've been meaning to ask you about him. He certainly should be on that candidates of for the Bears to reach out to if indeed he becomes a free agent.
Spotrak has him at $14.1 million.
More than Becton, huh? That's interesting.
Yeah, he's the second highest, and then the fourth guy I got is Patrick McCarry, who's the left guard. All the first 3 guys are all right guards. McCarry's a left guard, but he also can play tackle. He could probably play any position. He's with Baltimore now. He's not the athlete, and I don't know if he's a fit because I don't know exactly what they're going to do here. I know one thing: they got a good offensive line coach. And speaking of that, I kept looking. The Bears haven't announced any of these hires. They've only announced the coordinators, and they won't. My feeling is nothing will be announced until after Virginia's funeral tomorrow. So it'll, on Thursday they'll probably have a bunch of announcements on coaching hires. But anyway, it wasn't until today that Dan Rochard's name came off the Tulane website.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah, now they never said he left, but he's not listed as the offensive line coach anymore.
He's probably in Chicago and going to now and probably going to sign his name to a contract.
Well, they're probably slow getting to it. Like also the I didn't check today, but the other day I looked, the defensive line coach who was supposed to be coming from the University of Florida. Well, he was still on their website a couple of days ago.
Well, we'll check out this afternoon and see if it's still there. Tony, the pod boss, wants to know. He says there's a lot of. Yeah, he's a great guy. He says there's a lot of free agent guards who have had soft tissue injuries or have been out for a period of time. Are you against bringing back Tevin Jenkins on a 1-year kind of prove it deal?
Yes.
You want to elucidate on that?
Yeah. He's missed 21 full games in 4 years. This past year, I don't know what the partial games was in previous years. We know this year there was at least 4 other games that he started and never finished. And, and this was the year that it was contract year for him. And you had to say, okay, you got to step up to the plate this year. You got to show that you're durable. Didn't do it. I mean, in fact, played less this year than he has.
Yeah, it was difficult for him to play 4 quarters at times.
Yeah, I mean, and it wasn't just soft tissue. I mean, he's got a back. He's got, he's got something wrong with him every week. And I just, remember I've said it in the past, there just seems to be something missing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is because I'm not around the guy. There's no question he's got talent. But, I'll take these other guys over him. Like Becton. Becton missed the 1 year. He had a bad injury. Otherwise, he's playing all the time.
Sorry about that.
Fries missed. He had a broken leg. Otherwise, he's playing all the time. And who else is there? I haven't checked everything on.
Isn't there a center from Green Bay?
Hasn't missed a game in his career? I don't think.
That's amazing. Now he's had this blood clot issue, and Tony was asking about that. Does that concern
that was in
you?
college.
Okay.
I went because I wanted to look it up, and I'm sure that's what hurt his draft stock. And the proof in the pudding is he's played 4 years without an issue. So in your 2 days of tampering or whatever, then you're gonna try to find out some stuff. But heck, that you go back. Okay, the negotiation period starts 4 weeks from yesterday. Go back the last 2 years. Bears have done 2 deals inside of the first hour each year. So
Okay.
and one of them's always been a big deal. So they're going to get one of these guys in now, but if it's, I just don't think Smith makes it there. I think, they find a way to keep him. I'll be pleasantly surprised, but just when you look that he is so much better than anybody else they got, how do you let him go?
Yeah. Yeah, I got to believe, after the beating that Patrick Mahomes took, he might say, listen, take all the money from my contract that you need to keep.
Well, they can always borrow from his contract because you just convert salary to bonus.
To bonus dollars, yeah.
I mean, it's easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have a lot of money. Philly doesn't have. Philly has got like a big book full of free agents.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I don't think they can even come near keeping Becton because he was on a 1 year deal. But like they got Josh Sweat coming up, who was they just signed in the last year to a 1 year deal. He's going to command a lot of money, and he's their best pass rusher. They signed that linebacker Bond, who was a key part of the defense last year. He's a free agent. They got just a boatload of free agents. And when you look at their offensive line, everybody else is under a long-term contract. So they can, and they got backups there. So they can afford to lose a Becton where Kansas City can't afford to lose a Trey Smith. But, there's a defensive lineman, defensive tackle, is a backup, plays in the rotation. Had a big game in the Super Bowl. Williams, Spotrek's got him. He was making like $900,000 this year on his rookie contract. Okay, well they got him as an average deal at $10.3 million.
Not bad.
Yep.
Myers,
excuse me, I'm wrong. $12 million.
Okay. Josh Myers, the center of the Green Bay Packers, is set to become a free agent. Any thoughts on Myers potentially?
Yeah, I like the guy of Atlanta a lot better, but
True
there's not
Donald.
a lot of centers now. So here's what's going to happen first. Okay, Rocher is going to come in. He's going to watch all these guys. He's going to make his opinion felt. And so then they're going to make a determination of what they're going to do. Like he'll say, okay, yeah, I can go with Bates. Or he'll say, nope. And they'll make that determination. So then you can go, you can go in the free agent market if Atlanta doesn't re-sign him. But Atlanta right now, as they sit, are like 10 million over.
Oh my goodness.
they got Buffalo's up. There's like 7 teams that are over the cap right now.
Wow.
So now when you look at that, you say, okay, how are they going to keep them?
They got to get rid of Kirk Cousins is how they're going to keep him. They're going to dump that contract somehow.
Yeah, but that's going to cost them money too.
Yeah. Before we get to the draft questions, I know there was a topic regarding free agents that you wanted to talk about, and that some people, are thinking certain players may be available when they're not. Do you recall?
Well, yeah, like I don't think Josh Sweat's going to be available. He's too valuable to them.
Yeah.
And, I haven't worked with Howie for a year and known him well and talked to him a lot. It's he finds ways to get his money. I put in I sent a text to a guy yesterday afternoon to see if he can come on sometime in the next few weeks. His name is Jake Rosenberg. Jake was Howie's right-hand guy. Left right after the draft a year ago. Started his own consulting company, but he was the cap guy and the contract rule. He came to his first year in Philly was when I got there in 2012. He was in Chicago. He worked downtown at the Board of Trade. And, was a commodities guy, really a bright guy, but he's the brains behind putting all these contracts together and how you do it. That's why I want to see if he can come on. I haven't heard back from him, and he's so busy, I might not be able to get him, but there's just so many ways you could. Philly's always up against the cap, but they never lose anybody.
That's amazing. Amazing.
And so they only lose the guys they want to lose. And so it's I can't see Josh Sweat being gone.
Yeah.
I can't see Braun being gone. I can see Becton being gone. Williams is going to be tough because they got 2 first-round picks between Davis and Carter already there. And so, that might be one that they gotta, lighten up. But let's see what their cap space is.
With free agency about 30 days from now, just about, we'll be getting answers to a lot of these questions.
Not even 27, my friend.
27. Look at that.
27.
Got the countdown going.
4 weeks from yesterday.
Wow. Look at that. What an offseason this is going to be, for sure. I got some great questions.
Philly has got $18 million
in available cap
right
space
now, but they don't have a whole lot of players. So, but now you look at free agency. Here's who's free agents: Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham will probably retire. Zach Vaughn, Mekhi Becton, Avante Maddox, Milton Williams at defensive tackle, LaRaven Clark backup tackle. CJ Uzoma, backup tight end, Fred Johnson, another backup guard. There's a lot of backups in there. Paris Campbell, backup receiver. But they got to take care of Sweat, and they got to take care of Bond, in my opinion, first, because they're just key members of a defense that really won the Super Bowl for them.
Exactly. Yeah, I can't see them letting Sweat go. J2K has a good question here. Says, there's not many good centers available in free agency. If you had to pick a strength, would you prefer a pass blocker like Evan Brown or a run blocker, Coleman Shelton? What's more important for this offense?
Well, I don't know exactly what they want between Johnson and Rocher. So I'm throwing a dart at the wall. And I'm not going to do that. Evan Brown actually played guard this year.
Is that right? Okay.
At Arizona, because I was doing some work on him. Like I said, the guy at Atlanta is the best. Let's go. I'll tell you what they are. I think they are. And the money on him is not going to be too bad. They're saying like $10 million for that center from. Okay, let me
thank Keith Lutz for the $5 donation. Keith writes for, I think it's Patch, right? Keith, is that the publication? He wrote a very funny article about the Super Bowl prediction coming from Donald Trump. An interesting and funny read, and let us know where else people can catch you.
I don't know if Trump made a prediction. He just said he was favoring Kansas City.
Yeah.
The cap space is Atlanta is 11.1 million over the cap right now as they sit. And
wow,
who do they got? I mean, they got they got a Justin Simmons, Lorenzo Carter, Mike Hughes. They just got a bunch of guys that are up, currently coming out of contract. Matt Judon, who made $11 million last year, but way down at the bottom is their center Drew Dahlman, who only made $1 million. But he's projected to make like $10 million or something in free agency. Mm-hmm. And I don't see how they do it when they got a lot of guys they got to sign, even though it's a key position, and they're already 11 million over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Tony has a question that we sort of addressed it last week when you were commenting on Sylvie's or one of the Chicago radio broadcasters saying Ryan Post has to get Ben Johnson type players. But he says regarding the philosophy, because it appears Post has had a philosophy of drafting high upside guys versus proven blue chip guys. He is asking you, do you think that Ben Johnson's presence might change Pose's philosophy and him going for guys who have had a better track record in college football than perceived play in the NFL?
Tony, it's a good question. I don't know if I have the answer, only because as the offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson wasn't big in the draft room. They never are. The only coach in the draft room is the head coach. The other guys aren't there. It's a personnel department deal. The coaches have a say as they're putting the board together. They write reports and the type of guys they want, and they're the guys who write up the position profile. So that'll be interesting over the next few weeks, is trying to find out, okay, how do the position profiles, especially on defense, change as compared to what Flus was looking for. And if you look at the defenses that Allen had at his previous stops, New Orleans being the one most recently, is that he's got bigger guys along the defensive lineman, along the defensive line. And the edges guys are pretty big. We're pretty big down there. So does that mean that some of these guys aren't fit? I don't know, because you can't get rid of everybody. Mm-hmm. But that'll be interesting. It'll be interesting in seeing how, if the offensive line profile changes, because they wanted, for an outside zone, they wanted athletic offensive linemen. Well, you look at Detroit. Detroit's group was pretty darn athletic on the offensive line, so may stay. That may stay the same, but I can't answer it right now because I just don't know. Yeah.
A little time and we'll have a better idea for you. J2K is bringing up that Ian Cunningham is interviewing for the Jags GM job this Friday. It's his second interview. What do you think his chances are of landing that gig?
That's not his second. It's his first interview with Jacksonville.
Oh, okay.
They were just starting interviews today or tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And there's about 10 guys. There are 4 different real good league insiders that say it's his job for the taking. If he wants it, he'll get it. Obviously, interviews can change that.
For sure.
One guy says on X, well, he's just going down for the practice. Why? He's already interviewed 6 times. Why would he go down for the practice? It's like a ridiculous statement.
It truly is.
So, he's going down because he wants the job, or not necessarily wants the job, is interested in the job. Mm-hmm. One of the ties and why people think that it might be his for the taking is that his agent and Cohen's agent are the same person. And it's a guy out of Nashville.
Oh, yeah. I've got his name. Yeah.
I don't have the name in front of me.
Somebody in the chat, I'm sure, will bring it up.
It's not one of the common names.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I wrote down though on some of these free agents? I wrote down who their agents are. Like Trey Smith's got CAA, Jimmy Sexton. So I mean, Jimmy Sexton's gonna get a ton of money for Trey Smith, whether it's in Kansas City or in free agency. Becton has got Sports Stars, which I know all those guys there. They're very fair people. Who else? Will Fries has got Joe Linta, another guy, very, I'm not going to say easy to deal with, but another good guy to deal with. And Macari has got Rich Rosa, who was Tony Agnone's partner for a long time. So, I mean, there's some good agents there. We'll just see what happens, in another month.
Excellent. Well, yeah.
Your picture froze there on the screen,
but I'm back, right?
No, not to what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing is a frozen Aldo.
Yeah. And actually, your connection has been kind of I hear your audio perfectly, but your connection has been kind of lagging just a bit. Yeah. So I think it might be.
I gotta yell at.
Comcast. Oh, there you. Bye, Greg. I didn't kick him out. I swear to you. Yeah, Keith, that's what I was seeing too. I was seeing a frozen Gabriel. So every time he has a bad internet connection, his Wi-Fi is sometimes a little tricky, especially with bad weather coming. I will freeze up and he thinks it's on my end. And I'm thinking, well, I got a feeling it's on your end. Hopefully he'll pop in real soon. Not mean. Greg, have you had to deal with terrible agents? Well, I'll ask him that if he gets back here. Hopefully his connection will allow him back here. We had some other good questions. I can tell you, while we're waiting for Greg, that he has booked Eric Galco for next week's show, which I think is going to be on Monday. Eric is the executive director for the Shrine Bowl game. So not only will he give us insight into the prospects who played there and who could be good fits for the Chicago Bears and their needs in the offensive, defensive line, but at the safety position too. I think this team needs to bring in a safety in day 3, early in day 3. The Bears have had in the past a penchant for drafting safeties in the 3rd round. I don't think we'll see that this year. We'll probably see it in the 4th round. But, what do you guys think? Do you think if Xavier Watts is available at pick 39, are you jumping on him, or are you just solely focused on upgrading the offensive and defensive lines first? And I don't know if you saw my previous show. I did a show at night, the Bears Stuff BS with Aldo. And I proposed the idea that if we are able to sign like a Trey Smith and a Will Fries or a couple of good, high-quality offensive linemen, should we then try to acquire a trade up and acquire a pass rusher, Mason Graham or Abdul Carter? There he is, Greg. How are you, man?
I'm on my phone now, so
I noticed that.
How good this is going to be.
It's working fine.
Okay.
Trenches. I was just throwing out the idea there, Greg, that if we being Ryan Poles, acquires 2 really good offensive linemen in this free agency, should we consider, if Abdul Carter or Mason Graham falls to 4 or 5, should we then consider trading up to acquire those guys and giving up one of the 2 second-rounders and a second-rounder from next season, along with the number 10 overall pick, to trade up and acquire a Graham or Carter? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't see Carter getting out of the top 3 or 4.
Yeah, looks that way.
Graham, that's a possibility. And you could. part of it is, although it's what kind of grade do they have on the player?
Absolutely.
Okay, which we don't know. So now I'm gonna go back to Daniel Jeremiah, and I trust what he says. I've known Daniel a long time, and he worked in the league a long time for two good organizations, for Baltimore and Philly. He has got 25 defensive linemen graded as potential starters in the league.
Ooh, that's nice.
Or wait a minute, I take that back. Defensive tackles.
25 defensive tackles in this draft?
Yes.
Wow.
He has it in a post from last night.
Okay. Well, Mason Graham, I'm not trading up for you if we got grades like that. And
I looked
DTs.
up the thing, but I can't because I'm on my phone now. So
No, I understand. We'll share it on social media. That is phenomenal. Well, that really puts things in perspective then.
I think you go to that opening press conference with Ben Johnson. What's one of the first things he said about the defense?
Offensive line, or
he said he goes, "Boy, there's a drop off after they lost Billings."
Yeah, indeed.
And so right away it's you need a guy to play in the. There's somebody pulling up here. What is it?
Did you order a pizza?
Package. I guess it was a package. Anyway, let me just see who that is. You talk.
Sure. Okay. Absolutely. A lot of people are, I've been sharing this, Operation Get Carter, Abdul Carter, but also Graham. I'll take any one of them over any one of the offensive linemen who is first round, who has gotten a first round grade. I think that there is that much of a gap, and I feel that this team, the Chicago Bears, needs some superstars. Am I willing to risk having a mediocre offensive line for it? No, I'm not. This is all dependent on acquiring a Trey Smith, Becton, Will Fries, Dahlman on the offensive line. So let me bring Greg is back on his computer. Look at that thing loaded up quickly for him. And D. Starren wanted to know if that was Comcast repair knocking at your door. He's frozen. See, he's frozen. It's not me. Let's go back to this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you losing me? Why is that? Wait a minute. I got to make sure that there. I don't know why it's doing that. There. I think I fixed it.
I think you got it.
You go back. He made it a point saying that when the Bears lost Billings, that there was a big drop off, and so that tells me you need another one technique who can play in the rotation with Billings.
Mm-hmm.
And does that mean you spend a first round or second round pick on him? Not necessarily. You got to get a grunt who can play the run.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And there are guys like that in free agency that aren't going to cost. I mean, look what they got Billings for like $1.7 million on his first contract. You can get guys like that. I got a few names down, and they're good players, but they aren't going to cost an arm and a leg. Greg Gaines for Tampa Bay played for the Rams before that, had Super Bowl experience. There's Derek Nandi, who's been hurt some of this year with Kansas City. But the guy I really like, and he signed a 1-year deal with the Jets last year and then got hurt. He had a knee or something. His name is Leki Fotu.
Oh, yes.
He's from Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And he is a big 6'5", 330-pound guy who can move. He ran like a 5'1" at that size coming out at the combine. And, so he's in free agency. That's a really interesting guy, to pair. But it's going to be up, to the coaching staff to see how they want to do it. So, I mean, we can play fantasy football all we want, but you got a whole new staff, and they're going to be looking for some different types of people, and we're gonna get an idea. Like, if we waited till, say, 4 weeks from today to do a show instead of on Monday of that week, because they have free, or later in Monday, because free agency was done, or the first day of free agency was done, you're going to get an idea right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Maddie, Tyler Booker is very intriguing too. So what about the idea of, I asked you about trading up. What about the idea of trading down from 10 and getting into the teens?
I mean, you got to have a trade partner to do it. So you got to have somebody somebody's got to be eyeballing somebody. Yeah. I mean, that, and it depends too. I mean, what are you looking at 10? And also, part of the equation is, do you still have Ian? Because if you don't have Ian, you got a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah, absolutely. And
okay, so then you got 2 2s and 2 3s.
Yeah.
So it's, and we'll know that within 10 days, if that, a week.
Yeah. Indeed. J2K is worried about Will Campbell. He says not only is the arm length an issue, but he's got a really wide stance that won't work at offensive guard. He's starting to think that maybe Will Campbell is a fish out of water. Don't you think that good coaching?
I'm not going to worry about some of that stuff. That's coaching. I like some of the guards better than I like him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what other people think. I only care what I think. And I don't, knowing what Poles likes, and Poles wants length, he just doesn't have the length. That doesn't mean they're not going to take him, but he doesn't have the length that Poles is looking for. And, I've said it about 3 times in the last few weeks, is they got to make a determination of what they're going to do with Amagaji. Not many fans, we played and he stunk. No, you throw that out the window, because he missed training camp. And when a rookie lineman misses training camp, he washes his rookie year, because there's no way you can make up for what you lost once the season starts. There's no hitting once the season starts. So the guy's got a ton of talent. And then he's going to look at, can I do anything with Braxton Jones? Can I make Braxton Jones better? Now, this offensive line coach is pretty damn good.
I'm interested in learning more about him. And so let's devote some more time in one of our upcoming shows to talk about him. I want to take care of.
Just look at what he had a line at New Orleans one year that had, like, between the Pro Bowl and all pro, we had like 4 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had to teach those guys how to do something.
Yeah. Ron Turry had a really good question back when the show started that I saved. The Bears have a lot of contracts that can be converted from base to bonus to free up cap space. Yeah. What is the disadvantage of doing this?
You're only going to do it for a guy you know is going to be around.
So for a guy who's not in his 30s,
like Sweat. Like Sweat's got a big deal. DJ's got a big deal. Those guys you can, because they're not going anywhere.
Right.
Okay. The linebacker, you got a big. He's got a big contract, but is he going to be a question mark with this staff? We don't know that. If the staff is sold on him, then you can borrow money. But I would say the first, Sweat and DJ are the first 2 guys that what happens is then the money you're not lengthening the contract. You're just giving, let's say you're taking $5 million or $6 million in salary and turning it into bonus, and then amortize that over the rest of the contract.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And he gets the money right up front.
All right. Which isn't bad for the player. got a question here from Squeegee. Is there any center in the draft that you would start in front of Caleb, or should we get a vet? You've talked about the importance of having a veteran at center, particularly when you have a young quarterback. But is there a center in this upcoming draft that you feel this guy could handle the job? You mentioned Gray Zabel, very smart.
Yeah, but I
guy.
don't know if he can handle the job.
Right.
I mean, he's coming from FCS level competition.
Exactly. So he's got to prove that he can play, but he might have.
It's not just that. It's prove that you can. That he can make the line calls and make the adjustments, because he's the conductor.
Right.
Okay. So he's standing up, waving the wand and doing things. Now, if you sign a real good guard and free agency that's been around, that can help, because you got another guy. And you can get away with a young center, and it depends on if, let's say they take Zabel in the second round. Some people got him going in the first. I just can't see it. But
I saw Field Yates had him in the bottom in the first round. I go, how did this happen?
Well, that's the Senior Bowl bump, and then we talked about it. You're going to see guys get the big bump, and then they're gonna come back to normal. But I mean, he proved he's one of the few guys that where the Senior Bowl is a big help to him, because he was at a lower level of competition. So you saw him against the big boys, and he performed against the big boys. But if he's smart enough, a lot is what's going on upstairs, and how quickly can he recognize things?
Yeah, and given that he hasn't really played center in college, he did it at the Senior Bowl during some practices and so forth. Is there any way to tell whether he can, play the center position in the NFL? You can't tell at the combine, right?
That's why them coaches are getting that big money.
You talk to the guy and you see if he's got the smarts and the willingness to do it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta do a lot of board work with them too, and saying, hey, okay, and this is you're testing his brain, so you're going up and okay, there's from what are you going to say? You're coming up the lines. This is what you're seeing. What are you calling?
Mm-hmm.
And does he go there? Or is he going? I'm going to go boom, 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 boom. And then you can see how fast he thinks.
Yep. I remember seeing Jackson Powers Johnson of Minnesota at the Senior Bowl and falling in love with him, and he has yet to do anything in the NFL level that will convince me that he's going to end up being the center that I thought he was. So that's
the same thing from the kid down in the south suburbs that went to Minnesota the year before.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Don't ask me to remember that name. By the way, thank you, Maddie, for the $2 donation. Really appreciate it. You have really dug into that piggy bank the last few shows. Really appreciate it.
This is not a draft, though, there's no first-round center. And if you're going to say Zabel's a center, he's probably going to be the highest one. I think that you got to figure if you're – the number one determination is what's this new staff think of Bates?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then if he's strictly a backup or whatever, then you could move on from him and you're going to save $4 million or go out and try to get somebody. But there's only a couple in free agency that are worth a shit.
Yeah. That's always the case. Chris Watts wants your reaction to the stories that have been coming out that Shane Waldron did not watch film with his quarterback, Caleb Williams.
I see the stories. We're not in the building. I don't know if they're true or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what the source of that story is.
Yeah, I mean, what has Caleb ever said it?
Yeah, if anyone knows, let us know, because I'll look into that further, and then Greg and I can have a discussion about it. But, there's a lot of stories out there. I know that you're headed to Virginia McCaskey's wake. Do you have a couple more minutes to answer a couple more questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Excellent.
The wait doesn't start till 1 and it goes till, I don't know, 7 or 8.
Oh, okay. So you got time. Cornelius has asked if you have evaluated Darius Alexander yet.
No.
Okay,
That name doesn't sound familiar.
Isn't he the defensive end? Darius Alexander. I got his. He was at the Senior Bowl. He's an interior defensive lineman. Let me put his thing up here. Interior defensive
Toledo kid. Yeah, he's interesting because he dominates the MAC.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if he dominates the MAC like Khalil Mack dominated the MAC, but he's an interesting guy. Not a first round guy, but an interesting guy. Day 2 guy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, let's keep an eye on Darius Alexander. He'll be at the combine.
He's more of a 3 technique.
Okay.
And when you look at his tape at Toledo, he's playing the 3.
If the Bears acquire a 3 tech either via free agency or the draft, what do you think Jauron Dexter's role might be in Allen's defense?
Well, I think he can be a hell of a 3. And you know, how Allen plays a 3 versus how Allen plays a 3 could be totally different things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so and he might not always line up as a 3. And you know, I've never studied Allen's defense, so I have to go back and watch New Orleans play a little bit and see.
I'm looking
how
forward
they're
to
doing the alignments. You know, so
yeah.
I just know that whenever he's been strictly a coordinator, but when he wasn't the head coach, freaking defenses were really good.
Yeah. Kay has a question. He says, with this year's draft, top end loaded with good guards and converted tackles to guards, why would the Bears sign a free agent guard? Because there's a hell of a big need. That's why.
Because you need 2 of them.
Yeah.
And you want a veteran.
You have to have a veteran.
You want a veteran. So, you're saying sign. My thinking is they signed 2 free agent offensive linemen, one being a center and one being a guard.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that going to happen? Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
But, and then you're going to probably draft a guard.
I like what J2K is saying here because Dennis Allen does like those big defensive ends. I would not be surprised if Jauron Dexter plays some defensive end. In fact, he's already played defensive end for Eberflus, but not that many snaps. I
don't think he's got the juice, though, that like Cam Jordan was a defensive end under Dennis Allen for a while, and Cam Jordan was not anywhere near as big as Jauron Dexter. Okay. Cam Jordan was like, 285, 290, not 315.
Okay. Got some more questions here. Chris asked an interesting question. Have you had to deal with terrible agents? We know you've got friends in the agent community. Any one of them, not to mention names or anything, but you felt that guy was a SOB?
No, I mean, some are harder to deal with. My good friend, the late Eugene Parker, there's people that didn't like Eugene because he was hard to deal with. I mean, he drove a tough bargain, but the guy's a great person. Everybody loved Eugene.
Yeah.
But, when you had it in, Devin had him, Sed had him. He had, who was a real good wide receiver we had from South Carolina that Emory drafted in the 2nd round. He had that guy.
We drafted in the 2nd guy. Oh, Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah, he had Alshon. A lot of good guys. But what Eugene used to do is he used to get fixated on a number. This is the number I want, based on his research, and he wasn't budging off that number. So it was like, you better come along my side because I ain't moving.
Jeez.
and you know what? It always ended up that way.
Yes, indeed. Let's see here. What did Keith have to say? I believe the Bears will be sold. Back when we were talking about selling the team, he says because Ben Johnson received a $13 million contract, was this done to keep fans interested? If fans lose interest, would the value of the team go down?
First of all, the team is not getting sold. I mean, anybody who thinks the team's getting sold, I mean, it keeps going up in value. And if wherever they end up building a stadium, if the city owns it, that doesn't help the team as far as value. But if they build it, their value is going up even more.
Indeed.
So it's, if you listen to what George has said in the past, George said, team's we're not selling. And they're not. Why should they?
Yeah, I hear you.
I stick up for the McCaskies. And I'm always going to. Mm-hmm. They've been good to me. They're good people. I think they know. Put it this way: when you listen to I read an article today what Ron Rivera had to say about the interview process, and then when we had Rick Smith on Ben Johnson's agent, what he had to say. Everybody's saying the same thing. They're doing it the right way.
I have to agree. It's just we're not seeing the results, but the approach, for the most part, I mean, they could have invested more in the trenches, meaning they being Ryan Poles. I think he will admit that perhaps was a mistake. But for the most part, they've done it the right way. Gut the roster, start from scratch.
No, but I'm talking now since they've made this change, and so going forward, and for all the people that kept thinking, well, Poles isn't going to be here, he doesn't have any clout. Well, everybody says the same thing. Poles ran everything.
They're giving him that the tools he needs to do the job well. So let's
the whole interview process, Poles ran the whole thing.
That's good to hear. That's really good to hear. And I got a feeling that based on some of the stuff that I read, is that George McCaskey talked with Kevin Warren and said, this is the way it needs to be. He is our GM. He will lead the process. That's just some speculation, reading in between the lines of some of the stuff that I've read. Tim Willis wants to know about Kevin Zeitler, the Detroit Lions 34-year-old offensive lineman. Since it doesn't look like Trey Smith will be available, what do you think about bringing in a 34-year-old offensive lineman?
35.
He'll be 35?
Yeah. Right? So, I mean, I can't speak for Poles, and if Johnson wants him, I would never bring in a 35-year-old, because all you're doing is you're putting a Band-Aid on a position that you need to put stability there. So how much, and Zeitler plays good, and he's been fairly durable throughout his career, but how much is left in the tank at 35 years old? Right. And you still got to get somebody to play that position long term, because you can't count on him for more than a year at 35 years old. So I get it, but to me it's a Band-Aid. To me, put it this way: you strike out on the other guys, okay, then you go that direction.
Yeah, or an injury, correct? Yeah. Laz wants your opinion on the proposed state legislation that would mean a team has to have a 500 or better record over the previous 3 years to be eligible for state funding. Have you heard of that? I did see that.
I've never heard of that, and
I gotta tell you, I don't know what political party represented that idea, but get back to work on some real issues here.
Yeah, I mean,
stop looking at the box score.
That has nothing to do. No, because when you're going to build a stadium or something, it's being built long term. That's for the next 40 years.
Absolutely. Foster says, what do taxpayers get for funding a stadium? They get to pay more ticket prices and stuff. Keith, again, if Greg read my economic numbers in the Super Bowl preview about the indexes, McCaskey's take the money and run. Trump was okay. So he's talking about this article that he wrote, a satirical piece about Trump, and I'll send that to you so that you guys can comment on it at a later time.
I mean, if he's going to be anti-McCaskey, I'm not.
No, he's not. He's not.
But because just have the thing that they take the money and run. I mean, that's just not true when you hear what they've spent.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Do you know what it cost to build that new facility?
I'm with you 100%.
Do you know what it cost to buy that parcel of land down the street from you?
Right. There is just no way at all that this organization should be called cheap, spendthrift, frugal, what have you. They've spent so much money on the facilities, on all the things that Greg has said. That's an old narrative. We need to move on. Cornelius asked, did the Super Bowl change the draft strategy of most teams from the offensive line to the defensive line? I think it's the other way around.
Lines. It's both lines. Both lines. I've said it as long as I've been in the game. You win when you got to have three things: an offensive line, a defensive line, and a quarterback. Mm-hmm. You got those three things, you got a chance in every game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. Let's see. We got another one from Tony. Are you high on Charles Grant? He was once looked at as a offensive tackle #1 by some scouts. Do I have his thing here? Let's see. Have you had a chance to scout Charles Grant?
No, I don't know who he means there.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a Grant on my. He wasn't at the Senior Bowl, but Tony, if you got any more information on Charles,
send me a DM, Tony.
There you go. Brian says the cheap owner's narrative is media driven. I agree, Brian, that there's a lot of truth to that, but I also think that fans, people in general, once they get an impression on something that may have happened way back when George Halas was throwing around nickels like manhole covers, according to Mike Ditka, that perception exists for decades later when it's not true anymore. I've been called a womanizer.
Every owner in the league was that way back then.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't have nickels to throw
and
around.
Then the union got some power and they got a salary cap and the thing. How about this? Okay, the salary cap this year is going to be over $270 million.
Mm-hmm. Do
you know what it was when Jerry and I came here in 2004?
I'm going to guess $40 million.
No, 65.
Okay. I was in that 2-digit area.
It's gone up over $200 million. And you know what? You got to spend it. You
have to. It's the league rule. You got to spend it. You got to spend it. So J2K, so why was everyone all over Poles' nuts when he was drafting defensive backs and trading for wide receivers? I said this at the start. You build inside out. Poles is lucky to still be general manager. What do you think about that?
I mean, I was for drafting a defensive lineman last year at that 9 spot, but you know that. And that's but I get what they were doing. What they did is they overvalued or over-evaluated the players they had on their offensive. The defensive line, defense the year before was pretty damn good. And the defense this year started real good. They got some injuries and things were down the tube. They overvaluated on the offensive line. They can fix it in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
They can fix it this year.
Absolutely.
And make it a strong point. So it's and then you're gonna, you know what? If it does it right, then you're gonna be glad that he took a wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
They still got to get one more because I can't see him keeping Keenan Allen.
Yeah,
he's out of contract. if you look at what Johnson had in Detroit, he had more speed. Keenan doesn't run that fast.
Nope.
And so I whether that's another free agency acquisition or a draft, who knows? But, I would think that just looking at it, what you're looking for is a slot.
Yeah. Spotrac has Keenan Allen's market value at $11 million. You think that's too rich for the Chicago Bears to consider bringing back?
It's, do you want the player?
Right. I think that those targets that Allen got should go to Rome Odunze, and find your speedy third wide receiver in the draft or free agency if there's somebody.
Yeah, no, and there's some guys out there. Okay, let's go into that for a second.
You talking free agents?
Yeah, but it'll take me a while here. Give me a second.
Sure. Meanwhile, I will let people know that there's a show tomorrow night here on the Barroom Network. It's Johnny Santucci is back, and he and I are having a couple of special guests, including Ross Reed. We're going to talk a little bit about that halftime show that was so controversial. We're going to also interview.
I had to go to the store and get a sweet treat for my wife. I didn't see any of it.
Oh, a lot of people would tell you you didn't miss much.
I'm watching. I don't give a shit what they do at halftime. I'm watching a football game.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter to me.
Well, what's interesting, and Ross and I will talk about this tomorrow night at 8:00 Central, is that this was a specialized show. This was not mass entertainment. You and I, Greg, we don't listen to hip hop music. And so that kind of music, would be like maybe playing a Polish polka for me, or something else for you. But there was a lot of artistry involved. And so Ross is going to kind of decipher what that was for our benefits. And we'll talk about whether the NFL should tailor the halftime entertainment to a wider audience or allow specialized artists to handle the show.
Okay, one of the guys that is up for free agency, and he was hurt, so he didn't get to play much for Kansas City, but he's a real speedy slot. Is Marquise Brown? Okay, and I mean that guy in a Ben Johnson offense would be really good. Okay, Spotrac is estimating $8 million a year for him. I know that the polls, when they did the trade for Keenan Allen, he was also interested in Mike Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Williams is coming out of contract. Okay, and I don't see wait a minute, let me get back on it. But I don't see, him as a slot. $4.5 million, which for that kind of players is pretty good.
You're talking
really.
Which player are you?
Mike Williams, who used to play for the Chargers.
Absolutely, was with the Jets. Had some good productive plays.
What happened is he was coming off an injury from the Chargers, and he never really got healthy. And then he went to the Jets, and the Jets traded him to Pittsburgh. He only had a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
He was making like $10 million last year. Well, now because he went, he was hurt. Spotrac dropped his value down to like $4.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a good draft class for day 3 receivers too.
Yeah,
it's just loaded.
It's loaded, but you still need a veteran presence. Somebody like Tim Patrick from the Detroit Lions. Obviously, Ben Johnson.
Let me see if he's on there.
Should be.
Yeah, he is, but I got to see if they got a value for him.
I'll say because they don't do a market value for every player. Darius Slayton is a speedster who Kay just put up that he ran a 4.39 in the.
Well,
in
that
the fourth.
I already no, it was Marquise Brown again. Slayton is going to cost more money. Slayton is set to make over $10 million, I think. I don't see Patrick's name in here.
That's weird. Let me confirm that he's a free agent.
I thought he was, but I do not see his name. That doesn't mean he's not, just that I don't see it.
Yeah.
Oh, way at the bottom. He made, he's the last guy. Market value. He made $1.1 million last year, and he's got a market value of 1.7.
1.7. Yeah, he's 6'4".
He's 31 years old, and that probably has something to do with it.
Right. He's 6'4", so I don't imagine he's a speedster, but he's a big target and somebody, if you.
Well, he knows the scheme.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he knows the scheme, so I can imagine him. Tony the Pod Boss is throwing out Amari Cooper. I don't know. That's
Amari's
too
going
expensive.
to cost some money. Amari really didn't do a whole lot. I thought he'd do more in Buffalo, and probably, he came in late.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't too bad in the playoffs. I don't know if Buffalo can re-sign him. Buffalo is one of the teams that's over. Last year at this time, they were $45 million over. And this year, let's see.
By the way, thank you to Caleb Daniels, $5 donation. He's got a question about X-Line's running back Javid Best, Olympic sprinter.
They got Buffalo at 14 million over right now.
14 million. So they got to cut money. Matt Collins will be available. I like Matt Collins.
He's a little older and he can play teams.
Mm-hmm.
But he played some inside for Buffalo this year too.
Yeah, because there was some injuries.
And he can run now.
Yeah. Speaking of running, Javid Best was an Olympic sprinter. He's in his 30s. I don't think he's going to be playing pro football much longer. 5'9", 190 pounds, 36 years old, will be 37 during the season. I'm sorry, Caleb Daniels.
You got to have a guy that he's got running back there on that. No, I would never sign a 36-year-old running back ever.
No way.
That'd be like signing me, and I'm a freaking cripple.
Kay says the Texas running back Jadon Blue waiting in the weeds. He will jump at the combine. Keep an eye on him. By the way, Ian Wheeler, the guy who really impressed preseason and had that unfortunate injury that broke everybody's heart. Do you think he might have a role with this team? His injury seemed like it was an explosive.
I mean, you're not going to, because he's coming off an ACL.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to hand it to him.
All right.
It's going to be like last year. You got to earn it at camp.
Mm-hmm. He's got to play the special teams.
Part of it is, they're going to know he got hurt in August. So he's September, October, November, December, January, February. He's 6 months out.
Mm-hmm.
When they start the offseason program, they can start, because it's a new coach, they can start like a couple weeks earlier, and they get an extra mini camp too.
That's right. Nice.
You can, by then, he won't be full go, but he might be able to do some stuff and get a feel. But, he's going to be here. He's under contract.
Mm-hmm.
It's, and we think he can be good. It's, do you count on him?
Right.
Or do you say, no, he's going to have to prove it to me? And there's nothing wrong with that, because, he was in that situation last year and he proved it until he got hurt.
I like the name that Foster Covers comes up with here, Tutu Atwell. He ran a 4.39. Yeah, he's little. He's 5'8".
Big.
Tutu is too tiny.
As Parcells used to say, you can eat peanuts off his head.
But man, that speed. he could really stretch a defense for you. He
but-
never excelled.
Yeah,
with
but
the
you know
Rams.
what? He hasn't done shit in the league either. No,
Tony
you want some guys. You got lots of guys. You got to get somebody who can play now.
Yeah, indeed. Antonio says if Genti is drafted by
It's
the
not going
Bears,
to happen.
is that a fireable offense? It's not a fireable offense, but it's like you got to explain this to us.
Yeah, I mean, and there's people that want him. It's just
I don't see it.
no, and you know, Poles coming from Kansas City, they took one in his whole time there, and really since Andy's been there, they've taken one running back in the first round, and he was with like the 30th pick.
Right. And I took a quick, good look at Genti in that bowl game. And the first half, they were geared to stop him, and he did nothing.
He did nothing.
He did nothing. He did end up close to 100 yards by the end of the game, but a lot of that was just garbage.
I'm gonna tell you what now. There's two guys from Ohio State.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Travion Henderson.
Pretty damn freaking good.
Yeah. I like those guys.
And also the kid from Iowa is good. There's a lot of good backs.
There really are. There really are. And there'll probably be some gems as undrafted free agents as well, because it's so effing deep. All right, let's pull the plug on this one. I hear the dog barking. He probably has peed all over my kitchen floor, which I washed this morning.
My dog ain't barking. He already barked when that was an Amazon delivery, by the way. That the dog was barking at the door.
What'd you get? A new Bears jersey or something?
No, I didn't get anything. My wife got something,
but not for you, huh?
Not for me.
Well, Greg, are we back here Monday or Tuesday with Eric Galko?
Monday, Eric Galko.
Okay. Now, tell people about Eric Galko. How long have you known him? And,
I've known Eric about 15 years, and he's a really good guy. He's been running this is the 4th year, I think he's been running the Shrine Bowl.
That sounds right. Yeah.
2 years in Vegas, 2 years in Texas.
Right.
And it'll be in Texas because Jerry Jones is really backing it. As far as the number of quality players that's gone up every year, last year was the highest. I don't have the number, but he'll have it when he comes on next week. The highest number of guys drafted in years, and we had a first round pick, and you know the Ravens slot receiver was there 2 years ago. Went in the first round. There could be a couple more this year, but the feeling is we'll set a record for number of guys getting drafted. And I say we because I do work for the East West, and it's but Eric, real involved in the draft, but he's going to know those players from that East West, and how they did and what the feedback was, because he talks to the different teams to get some feedback on the players, because he wants to make sure he keeps getting better guys all the time.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, we're going to talk about players, but boy, oh boy, would I love to, ask him, and I won't, but about the rivalry between him and Nagy over at the Senior Bowl, because they're fighting, almost literally fighting for players.
You can ask him. He might not answer, but you can ask him.
I'll find a way to ask it in a journalistic way. That'll probably
I mean, I know the answer, but
there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff you need to share with me someday. All right, everybody. I want to thank you again. We'll be back here live tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Really appreciate Eric Edholm being a part of the show, and Greg Gabriel. You can make sure you follow Greg at GGabe Football on the X Machine, and follow me at Barroom Network. We will see you all next week on the next GTF. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.